Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Shino Kemsu aka Chronicle from Ruin Gaming, back with a themed gimmick build that I have had a lot of fun playing with and owning. In this video I'll explain the trait setup, armor, trinkets and ruin, sigils and weapons, and lastly food and utilities. Now I gotta say, as a hybrid thief, and I've been playing this for months now, I've had a lot of fun playing this build, as it is very different. Your skill rotation is very different from what many people are used to, and it just brings something new to the table and new to the game, and as well as to the fights. There's a fair amount of people who really don't know how to counter this build. I've countered to. There are really good players out there too, who are extremely well, who have their rotation down to the second that they need it, who will destroy me in that fact. And I'm just disclaimer, I'm not a pro player or anything. I am a very casual Guild Wars 2 player who enjoys the PvP competitiveness of this game, as well as the PvE aspect of it. But just to say, if you're gonna go dungeon running with this build, just don't say what you're running. Have like some berserker stats or something in your inventory, because there's a lot of elitists out there who's just gonna kick you out just because they think you're incompetent because you're running this kind of setup. But I'll get into it later on why this setup is actually really good both dungeon running and in world versus world. So let's get to it. Alright, first off, equipment. What am I running, or what should you spec for? What you should spec for when you run hybrid is you want 3 main stats, and then you want 3 secondary stats. 3 primary stats are going to be power, precision, and condition damage. And the secondary stats are going to be toughness, vitality, and either healing power or ferocity. Either way. I'm running fairly low ferocity and healing power, but as this is sort of hybrid and you want to aspect more into the damage aspect, you want to have power, precision, condition damage as your primary set. So you want to spread that out evenly. So for my armor, I'm running Sinister and I'm running Berserker. 3 Sinisters, 3 Berserkers. And I'm currently working on getting Ascended on all 6. But it's taking a long time to build Ascended armor up. I do have my Ascended weapons, which is, I believe it is Cold Forgers and Zojas on my 2 daggers. So anyways, for amulets and rings and so on and so forth, you will want to run Celestial on all accounts across the board. It's just gonna give you an overall nice stat boost on all aspects. It's gonna give you condition damage, your vitality, toughness, precision, power, you name it, everything. It's gonna give you that healing power that we want to get a little across onto. And why I want healing power is because we're running with Leeching Venom, and Leeching Venom actually scales off fairly decently. With even low healing power, you can get up to 400 health back on just around about 300 healing power alone. So even with a little bit of healing power, you're gonna get a huge benefit in the healing aspect, because the things that scale with healing scale really well with healing power. So overall, that's what I'm running with armor. As you can see, I'm running around about 18 to 1900 power, 43% critical chance, 183 critical damage, almost 1,000 condition damage. I'll reach 1,000 condition damage once I apply my food and utility. And if you're gonna think about it, condition specs are around about 1,500 to 2,000 condition damage, and those are fairly like specced out condition damage only, and not about power or precision as much, and more on defensiveness, as they're just using condition damage as their main attack. Well, as we're combining power, 2,000 power and 1,000 condition damage onto our offensive side, you will see that it sort of adds up and it fairly spreads out nicely. With that said, here is the themed gimmick build. The theme of this build is the Lotus Poison, or the poisonous Lotus Blossom. So, as you can already hear, that there's a lot of poison in this build, and as we're speccing into poison, we'll start seeing things making sense now. So as we're running Deadly Arts, Shadow Arts, and Trickery. Now on the first miner we have Serpent's Touch, which is going to give us 2 stacks of poison on our steel. Next is Lotus Poison, which is going to give weakness on the target whenever we poison the target, which is really nice because they're going to do less damage to us and they're going to get less out of endurance regeneration, so less dodges for them. Lastly, Exposed Weakness is that we're going to deal 10% more damage to an opponent whenever we have a condition on them. And we're going to be applying a lot of condition on them from our daggers alone and from spider venom as well. So they'll always have a condition on them. So we're always going to do 10% more damage to them. It's just overall a nice trait to have in this build. So the first one is dagger training. Now I've heard a lot of controversy on dagger training, why this is a poor trait to choose from. But in this build, I specifically think that it's actually quite viable, as we're going to build up a lot of poison duration, and it's going to go up to about 3 3/4, 4 seconds duration on any dagger hit, which means that you have a 33% chance for this to trigger, and it'll apply 4 seconds of poison. Now 4 seconds of poison doesn't sound very a lot, but if you consider the fact that we have Lotus Strike on our dagger and Spider Venom in total, those are all going to be 15-second long poison. We start to apply a lot of poison stacks on an opponent, and if we constantly can stay on that target, they're going to take a lot of poison damage, and they're always going to have the condition on them, and they're going to slowly, they're going to lose the capability of healing as much as they could do, because it reduces healing potential as well. Right now, dagger training is bugged, as it doesn't show the duration increase with potent poisoned, which increases duration by 33%. But you can see that the duration is increased with the armor ruin set that I have, which is Superior Ruin of Ore. I'll get back to that later in this video. Anyways, as is set up with a poison theme, you can go with Scale Venom for more conditions in terms of damage, plus Scale Venom applies vulnerability, which is always nice to have. But I generally like to keep 2 utility skills for stun breaks or gap closing, because we want to very much stay close to the target as much as possible. We want to be auto attacking our opponent as much as possible, because dagger is one of the fastest auto attacks we have, and therefore it is very nice that if we can stay and apply poison from dagger training. Next up, the master trait is Panic Strike. Now Panic Strike I choose because of the Immobilize. You can choose the other 2, but I'm not running traps and I'm not going to stealth up as much, and the power increase on this build is not very that noticeable because we're not a spiker. We don't do spike damage. We're not going to rely on that heavy hitting backstab. What we're going to be relying on is a lot of hits in a short duration, so that we can get the poison stacks up, which are going to dwindle our enemy's health down fairly quickly. We can run with traps because it reduces the cooldown of traps by 20%, so we can use it, as we do have Needle Trap, which applies more conditions and Immobilize and bleeds, but it relies on the opponent to step over that, and we will need to set up the attack for it. So in this case, I'm just gonna choose Panic Strike and rely on, I know the fact that when my opponent reaches under 50% health, my next strike is gonna mobilize them. That will be my time to backstab them, to Cloak and Dagger them, to Heartseeker them as much as I can before it runs out. Also, with the food we're running with 40% food duration, 40% condition duration with food. So the Immobilize is gonna be around 4 seconds long on with this Panic Strike. Lastly, in the Grandmaster, I'm choosing Potent Poison because I want to increase damage from poison alone, as we're gonna have a lot of stacks, and with Potent Poison we'll be doing more our poison will do more damage than bleeds. One stack of poison will do more damage than bleed. With that said, we're also going to increase the duration of all our poison applications, which in fact also will affect dagger training. So dagger training alone will now be applying 4 seconds of poison. It will also affect all other applications of poisons that we have, such as our Ruin and our Sigil, which I'll come back to also very shortly. But overall, we'll have some nice durations of poison, which is not only going to do a lot of damage over time, but it's going to reduce the effectiveness of their healing, and it's going to reduce their capability of fighting because they'll be weakened as well when we apply poison. So next, I'm going to choose Shadow Arts. Now, for Shadow Arts, you get Merciful Ambush, which is really nice. Melt with Shadows, which is also really nice. Resilience of Shadows, also really great, because whenever you stealth up, and I like to take Hidden Shadows in this case, you stealth up and you take less damage from AoEs and so on, as most people now know how to counter stealth, and that is to spam a hell of a lot of cleave and AoE, and it has saved me a lot of time just being able to stealth up. I am a little bit mixed on whether I should take Shadow's Embrace or the other one, which reduces the cooldown of our deception skills. Mainly because it was nerfed. Shadow's Embrace was nerfed, and I do like the fact that you can now reduce the cooldown of Hidden Shadows from 30 to 24 seconds, which helps you immensely a lot for more stealthing, and sort of like repositioning yourself and getting an overview of the current situation of the battlefield if you need it. Sometimes I'll take Withdraw, and other times I've also taken Skulk Venom, but that aside, even though Skulk Venom does not apply any utility benefits at all like Hidden Shadows and Withdraw, Skulk Venom is more of an offensive healing ability that we have, and it's very well won me many games and many battles in World vs. World due to the fact that I've been able to stick on my target and just heal through all the damage that they apply to me. Combining it with Leeching Venom, it is a very powerful healing skill, because not only does it do damage, but it heals you as well when you do that. Excuse me, I'm just mumbling here. When you deal damage to your opponent. Other than that, I have Leeching Venom, which will apply whenever I apply a Venom on myself and it triggers. I will steal health and I'll deal damage, which will also add up to my auto attack damage and my poison damage as well. So overall, you got to see like the numbers are starting to stack on one another, and we can sort of like combine it into a burst, but not considered a burst, because burst would be more like you do 2-3 heavy hard hitting skills, but in this sense we're doing a lot of damage in a short duration of hits. So, and lastly, choose either Venomous Aura or Shadow Rejuvenation, because Venomous Aura if I'm running with a group of people, or Shadow Rejuvenation if I'm just running solo, because the heal and the initiative regain on it is fairly nice. Venomous Aura is just overall decent because you reduce the cooldown of all your Venoms, and since we're running with 2 to 3 Venoms at a time, it is nice to have them up as fast as possible. Also, Leeching Venom gives us Might, which will increase our overall power and condition damage, which is really nice, and what we really kind of need. We need Might in this build. Might is a very good boon for us to have, because it overall increases our damage potential, and it just spreads out very, very nicely. And that said, I'm going to move into Trickery. In Trickery, I choose Thrill of the Crime, Bountiful Theft, and Bewildering Ambush. Why? Because Flanking Strike is, again, it's team orientated, but it gives you a 10 seconds boon duration on one stack of might, fury, and swiftness. And swiftness is also really good in this case because it allows you to stay close to your target or sort of get away and get some distance from your target if you need to, and so on and so forth. But the might also really nice, and the fury very nice because it just increases your damage potential. What was it? Bountiful Theft. Steal 2 boons from your opponent, and there are a lot of people, especially Dagger Elementalists, which is the bane of this build right now. Dagger Elementalists are very strong due to the fact they have very strong condition clear. Any build that has very heavy condition clears, you're going to have a little bit of a tough time fighting against. You can still win if you outsmart them, but the fact is Dagger Elementalists are extremely strong in the current format of specializations. They're just very hard to deal with. I have had my fair share of luck and skill in playing against them, and you'll see soon enough, or you might have seen, that the one thing that killed Dagger Elementalist was the fact that I stealed in after he got out of water, and basically it was the confusion that killed him because he was spamming auto attacks, and he just wasn't healing enough from the poison alone. So Bountiful Theft I would choose in this format because you do need... Vigor is really nice, and you need to dodge a lot, because in this setup you don't have the dagger pistol to stealth up whenever you need to, and you're fairly open as you do not have as much stealth capability as you might think. Even though we would run with Hide and Shadows and we can cloak and dagger up, in many times at this current state of the game, a lot of experienced players know when to dodge, and they can see the animation wind up for a cloak and dagger. If you can get a cloak and dagger off, that's good. But a lot of people who see dagger thieves will try to dodge your cloak and dagger, and if you do, you're left with very little initiative or less initiative, and you can just cloak and dagger twice. If you miss twice, you're left with no initiative that you need, and your initiative regen isn't that high in this build. So, anyways, also I just like to point out the minor traits in Trickery. Kleptomaniac gives you two initiative when you steal. Preparedness increases your initiative by 3, so you're up to 15 initiative, which is really nice, and I'll get to that in a second, why that is nice. And that is because of the third minor trait, or the Grandmaster minor trait, Lead Attack. Increase the damage per initiative, 1%, have 1% increased damage per initiative, and that is 15% increased damage per initiative. So at full initiative, we're doing 50% more damage to our target. And if you counter or tie that with exposed weaknesses, you're suddenly doing 25% more damage to your target, because they'll have a condition on them when we apply a condition, and we're also going to do 50% more damage when we have full initiative. Overall, fairly nice minor trait to have. So yeah. I do sometimes like Flanking Strike. You can choose from, because it's very competitive right now towards Thrill of the Crime, as now that they've reformatted how quickness or haste works for thieves, that we don't lose our precious dodging from doing so, and we don't need to have Signet of Agility just to regain the endurance when we want to get quickness. You can now pump out a lot of hits in a very short amount of time to apply both your stacks of poison and whatnot on your opponent. So Flanking Strike, you can take over Thrill of the Crime if you want, but if you do, I do recommend that you take Trickster next to it, because it's going to reduce the cooldown of your Flanking Strike in the trait, and you'll see it come up and be ready in more often at every fight that you're going to go into. So, just a side note there. You can also choose haste if you want on your utility, But if you're gonna have run with any tricks in your utilities, I would recommend that you don't go with Bountiful Theft, and instead you take Trickster to reduce the cooldown and will allow you to remove a condition whenever you use a trick. And that said, you should also then run with Withdraw, because Withdraw is fairly nice because of the evade and the removal of any crippling effects on you, such as Ice, Immobilize, and Cripple. So that's pretty much it for the traits, or the specialization here. Now on to... Whoa, this has already been a very long video. But it's not over, folks. There's more to come. So anyways, moving on to the ruins and sigils and then the food. Now my choice of ruins is Superior Ruin of Ore. You can go with Superior Ruin of Radisum, but with Superior Ruin of Ore I get poison duration and condition damage, and as well as a nice little benefit at the end that if I get struck at 20% health, I will gain quickness. It's not really that needed, but I just overall like the fact that when I get struck, I will apply poison, which will be 15% seconds long, 15 seconds long poison on my target, which also adds nicely to the fact that I can just pump out a lot of poison on a person. I'm a poison machine. That's what I am. Basically, that's what this theme is about. It's all about poison. For sigils, I actually have chosen to run with Sigil of Blight, and that is because, again, it applies poison on a critical hit. It has a 60% chance to apply poison on a critical hit, and since we're running more than 60% critical chance with Fury, we're very likely to proc that poison, and it's an AoE. So if more opponents are standing in our field that we're attacking on, they're all going to be applied with poison, and that poison is also going to be 15 seconds long because of our poison duration. So you can see it starts to stack up nicely. Although it has an 8-second internal cooldown, it's still nice to have, because after 8 seconds it's going to apply again. So that's 2 stacks of poison. So we can get 2 stacks off before the first one runs out. Overall, fairly nice. Also, Sigil of Venom, which will increase our poison duration by 20%. You can remove this if you want, and just go with the ones that apply bleed on crit, so that your daggers have more condition potential, so that they not only do apply poison from blight and your dagger training, but bleeds as well. So just a food for thought, really, that you can do. It's very, very you can experiment very much. I'm still experimenting with this build a lot, actually, and for my showboat I still haven't found the perfect sigils to use, because the sigils I'm running right now is Sigil of Accuracy, and I forgot what the other one was called. They just don't make sense on my short bow. I should probably run Sigil of Venom on that one, mainly because it'll increase the duration as well, poison duration, when I switch over to my short bow and I apply Poison Field. Because Poison Field was nerfed since the last specialization patch. But if you can get the Poison Field to increase duration, it'll apply more poison on your target before the field runs out, and therefore do actually more potential damage than you can without poison duration. So fairly nice thought there. So without further ado, here are some more clips of the Lotus Poison build.
Time to do some real damage.